The trouble started with one small mistake. A telegraph pole had been damaged, only slightly. But in farming, even slightly can turn into a full-blown problem before lunch. Then the tractor started flashing warnings. The fan was out, the machine was angry, and nobody had touched a single button. That is how farm days begin. Not with clarity, with confusion. Jeremy Clarkson was trying to work through it, but the field was wet, the weather was awful, and the barley still had to come in. That was the real pressure. Not the joke, not the shouting, the job. And once the job begins to fight back, farming stops being romantic very quickly. Clarkson and Caleb were in their usual rhythm. One of them was trying to direct, the other was trying to survive the directions. There was the usual teasing, the usual sarcasm, the usual sense that if you let either of them sound too sensible for too long, the whole mood would collapse. Clarkson joked about opening supermarkets, Celebrity Love Island, and being asked to go to Australia. But underneath the nonsense was something more honest. He did not want to leave. Not really. Because this was his world. Mud, machinery, irritation, and all. Then came the gloves, the helmet, the full safety routine. Caleb made it very clear that he did not trust Creo after the last time it had gone in his eye. Clarkson naturally called him a snowflake. That is the thing about these two. They insult each other like an old married couple. And somehow it feels warmer, not harsher, because neither one is pretending. Then the age joke arrived. Clarkson asked whether Caleb was Gen X. Caleb said he was born in 1998. Clarkson, with perfect confidence and complete ignorance, treated that like it settled everything. It did not. It just made the whole exchange funnier. Because this is what makes the pairing work. Clarkson is 61, full of noise, ego, and experience. Caleb is young, practical, and permanently unimpressed. One talks. The other gets on with it. Then the rain got worse. Cold, wet, miserable. The kind of rain that makes everything feel harder than it should be. Clarkson complained, of course. He was covered in mud, his shoes were filthy, and he sounded genuinely offended by the weather. But the joke was that this was normal. This was the job. This is what farm life actually looks like when the cameras stop pretending it is picturesque. Then came one of the funniest parts of the whole exchange. A rope needed handling. Someone had to pull. Someone had to hold. Someone had to stop the entire thing from becoming a complete mess. Clarkson kept trying to direct the action like a man who wanted full control without doing the most awkward part himself. Caleb was doing the real work, as usual. And then came the line that could only exist in this world. Push like a man, not like some little baby goat. That is the tone of the whole thing in one sentence. Ridiculous, brutal, memorable. Then the small tractor came into the picture. It looked modest, but it still packed 210 horsepower with boost, or 185 depending on how you wanted to describe it. Black wheels, a go faster stripe on the bonnet, a bit of vanity, a bit of comedy. Clarkson loved that sort of detail because it lets him turn machinery into character. It is never just a tractor. It is a statement, a joke, a machine with an opinion. Then the mouse appeared. Nobody wanted to deal with it. Everyone froze. There was fear, disgust, and a great deal of unnecessary negotiation for something so small. Clarkson tried to frame it as being kind to the environment and kind to animals. That was the joke. The reality was that the mouse was never going to win this exchange, and yet somehow the moment still felt human. That is because the farm is full of these tiny collisions between comedy and cruelty, between instinct and practicality. Every small problem becomes a scene. Every scene becomes a story. Then came the line work. A straight line had to be laid from the gateway to the new gate. That was the instruction. Dead straight. Of course it wasn't. Caleb knew it. Clarkson knew it. The whole comedy of the moment came from the fact that the line was supposed to be easy, and yet somehow even that became a test of pride. Clarkson admitted at one point that his first attempt had been a disaster. He had aimed for the lavatories and had to swerve halfway through. That is exactly why the moment lands. Because it is honest. A farming mistake is still a mistake, even when it is funny. Then the story changed gear completely. The helicopter arrived, an Augusta 109, the same kind of chopper used in a James Bond film, and Caleb had never been in the air before. That detail matters, because it is not just a stunt, it is a transformation. Caleb, the man who can handle tractors, hedge cutting, drilling, cultivating, and all the rest, suddenly found himself doing something he had never done in his life. And that is where the comedy becomes something deeper. It is not about mocking him. It is about watching a very capable man step into total unfamiliarity. Then the machine lifted off. Caleb Cooper had left the ground for the first time in his life. That line alone is enough to carry the whole moment, because it is funny, and true, and just slightly moving. Then the flight gave way to the return, back to the farm, back to the weather, back to the mud and the noise and the endless practicalities of the place. And that is where the emotional payoff landed. 7 months earlier, Caleb had failed to plant a big strip in one of the fields. A real mistake. Not a joke, not a bit, a proper miss. But Clarkson had remembered. And now, instead of a disaster, there was a wildflower strip, a visible reminder of the error. Something planted in the same space where the mistake had happened. That is what makes this world so effective. The joke is never just a joke. The mistake never disappears. It gets absorbed into the land itself. And when Clarkson pointed out that he had written it in Wildflowers because Caleb had missed it, the whole thing became more than comedy. It became a kind of agricultural revenge, but also a compliment, because only someone who really knows the farm can turn a failure into something beautiful. That is the deeper truth behind the whole sequence. Farm life is not polished. It is not neat. It is not efficient in the way people like to imagine.